So you see, correct. Almost to the seal.
We have just with this year every day another siyum. We can almost take care of the whole 9 days.
That's right. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are going to be making the siyum of Yerushalmi Shvi'is. We are learning today Perek Yud Halacha Daled. We're learning today Daf Pei Zayin. We are beginning on Daf Pei Vav Amid Beis from the middle of the Mishnah, 4 lines from the bottom of the Amid. First, Ruach Chachamim Noiche Heimenu was what we learned yesterday regarding the borrower who, even though he doesn't have to return a debt for which no prusbul was made, or when the din of Shemitah will be mido'eraisa, and the whole takon of Hillel was only because Shemitah was midirabanan, during the time that it's midirabanan. In other words, whenever there is no prusbul, the Mishnah tells you, number one, that it's not proper to benefit from that which belongs to others. And as we spoke out yesterday, that even when no prusbul is made, it's not pshat that the debt is forgiven or the debt is nullified. No, there is a debt. Elamah, the debt doesn't have to be repaid, and the lender may not collect it, but there is a debt. So therefore, going beyond the letter of the law will be for the borrower to return it. Of course, you have to know how to return it. We also learned that when the borrower wants to return it, the lender has to tell him that I'm relinquishing. The borrower says, no, afal pikein, I want to pay you. But then he pays him back. And we're going to have 2 more Ruach HaChamim Noiche Himenus. Number 1, regarding dinim of a convert, as we will see. If someone borrows money from a convert, even if this person converted together with his children, halachically, a gerish and this guy, it is kekatan shenoy ladami. So a convert, if he has children after he converted, then his children are his heirs. If he had no children after he converted, this is the only person that halachically has no heirs. And for the record, by goyim, you have din Yerusha. That means a goy inherits from his father. A father who passes bequeaths to his son by goyim. But if you have a convert is like a newborn. A convert is someone that is possible to have no relatives. So what were to happen if a person borrows money from the ger? The ger is the lender. I'm the borrower. Prior to paying back, the ger passes away. Even though the ger has children, biological children, that converted with him, they're not his heirs. By the letter of the law, I get to keep it. I don't have to return it to anyone. Here again, that will be the second scenario where Ruach HaChamim Noiche Himenu will be if I pay it back to the children. Now, the logic over here is not because it's not proper to benefit from something that belongs to others. That logic does not apply over here. Because when the ger passes away, the ger passes away, really all his property becomes ownerless. And since I am the borrower, I already have that. I own it. Doesn't belong to anyone. We'll learn inside why it's ideal lefnim mishuras hadin midas chasidus to pay him back. That will be the second scenario. And the third scenario of the Mishnah will be about a person who is going to keep his word, particularly in business transactions, that the kol hamakayim is devarim ruach hachamim noiche himenu. And we're going to have to, that will be the bulk of today's shir. We're going to go over a sugya that we had in the Bavli, that at some point in a business transaction, after a down payment was made, even though money does not make the kinyan, you have to make a kinyan of Meshicha or Hagbah. Nevertheless, if there is a retraction, over there, the one who retracted gets the curse of Mishapara, prior to any money being exchanged. But when there was a commitment to make a certain deal, it is regarding that we will be discussing today. There's no Mishapara censor, but still, once you gave your word, then you should keep your word, even though technically, legally, it's not yet binding. And if you keep your word, that's the third Ruach Chachamim Noiche Himenu. That will be the daf of today. Chavre, let's go daf Pei Vav Amid Beis again. We are beginning in middle of the Mishnah, which is going to be 4 lines before the bottom of the Amid. Says the Mishnah, that haloiva min hager, someone who borrows from a convert, and we're speaking about someone shenisgairu banav imoy. So this is an adult, and when he converted, his already born children converted with him. This key is essential, as we'll read soon in the Marafulda. And therefore, again, because of the rule that Gerish and his Gair, his children halachically are not his heirs because they're not his children halachically. And now the convert dies, and now the debt is due. By the letter of the law, you don't have to pay it back to anyone. You don't have to. The principal passed away. He has no heirs. If it would be a Yid, then even when a person has no sons, his daughters are his heirs. If he has no sons or daughters, if he has grandchildren, they are the heirs. If he has nothing underneath him, then it goes back up. If his father passed away, then his father's heirs, which will be his brothers, will be his heirs. There's no such a thing as a Jew who has no heirs. We are all Bnei Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Question will it be a son? Will it be a brother? Will it be an uncle? Will it be a distant relative, but there is a relative? A convert has no relatives. So nevertheless, says the Mishnah, the imichser, but if he, even though his children converted also, that's the whole point. They converted all together. Doesn't matter. Each one is looked at as zero ground, a new beginner. Now, the imhechser, here's the second case. If the person chooses to give the debt back to the children of the ger, ruach chachamim noichehimenu, then the ruach of the chachamim are pleased with him. Now, here we must read the Marafulda. And again,
so isn't a convert looked upon like what do you call it? One who has no children, and you're supposed to be extra kind to them?
Extra kind has nothing to do with what we are discussing.
Well, the kids are his kids.
That he passed away. I'll give you an example, Kevin. When the convert passes away, he passed away already. Whoever seizes his property owns it. This convert. We don't say, let the children. Whoever seizes the property owns it. Because he has no heirs.
There's no merit ain, like we are treating him like pretty horribly after his death.
That's not called horribly. He passed away already. How are we treating him horribly?
Stop asking these questions. This is the halacha. Come on.
Now, one second. In the first case in the Mishnah, again, the logic of a borrower paying back a debt that Shvius went over and there was no perusbel is, like we said, there is a virtue of a person not benefiting from belongings of others. Here, there is no belongings of others. There's no heirs. So why is it that lefnim mishuras hadin? Why are the sages pleased? So the Marafulda says something beautiful. The Marafulda, my friends, if you'll see, go under the Gemara. It's 2 lines into the Mishnah in the Marafulda. Now, dafke lebanim shenisgairu imoy. This is dafke when his children converted with him. What does it mean, converted with him? What is he excluding? You can have a person who is married, a non-Jewish couple. The wife is pregnant. At that point, they all decided to convert, which means that the child was conceived when the father was a goy, but the child was born when the father is a Jew. In this case, the one that I just mentioned, and later, 20 years later, 30 years later, the ger loaned money. He was already an older Yid, older convert. He was 120. And the borrower did nothing wrong. The ger passed away. Here, even Ruach HaChamim doesn't advocate to pay back to that child. Here you keep it. What's the nafkamina?
So that's worse.
Let me speak out. The nafkamina is like this. By Goyim, there's Dinei Yerusha. If no one would have converted, in the case of our Mishnah, the father has children. Then if someone would have borrowed money from the father passed away, they would have to repay it to the children. Because the children inherit the estate. So I owe the estate. Now that they converted, now you don't have to pay back to the children. But here, we don't want for children to have an experience. I know that you guys were wording this, but these are the words. For them to be able to say, if we wouldn't have converted, then we would have gotten the money. Now that we converted, now we lose the money. Chaval that we converted. We don't want someone to have such a sentiment.
That's what I meant by merit ain.
Very good. We don't want that sentiment. But If the father would have converted when the children were already conceived, but were not yet born, then even by the dinim of the goyim, that child, think about it. It's not like if they wouldn't have converted, no one, the children didn't convert at all. The children were already born Jews. The father converted while they were pregnant. If the father wouldn't have converted, still the children would not inherit from the father.
Why not?
Because the children converted. Because the mother converted. In other words, we only say this if there was a time that without the conversion, then they would have inherited. Let's read it inside. The dafka laban of chinis gairu imoi, the yarshin henes aviyam in atoira. Guys, the yarshim hem aviyam in atoira means if they would not have converted. Just explaining what the Marafulda says. Was if they wouldn't have converted, then they would have inherited. So v'yesh yachush lachush, we are afraid. That's the issue here. Sheyoimru im hoyu goyim hoyu yarshim es aviyam. And therefore, they might be inspired. They might go back to being goyim by saying, "Listen, if we would be goyim, we would get the money. We want to go back to being goyim." But if when they were conceived, no one converted yet, but then the father converted with the mother before they came into the world, there was never a time, Danny, that these children would have inherited from their father, ever. Because when they were born, the father was already Jewish.
According to non-Jewish law?
According to non-Jewish and Jewish law.
Is considered a Jew, and therefore...
In other words, if we're saying that if there was once a time where they would have inherited from their father, that's where the Chachamim Ruach Chachamim Noichehimenu. If there was never a time that they would have inherited from their father. How? When they were born, if their father converted while they were pregnant, there was never a time where they would have inherited from their father. If when they were born, their father was a goy, they were a goy, at that time they would have inherited. Midin goyim. Midin toida. I'm saying the toida, it's what the toida says. It's what the toida says the dinim of the goyim are. Now I'm talking about the dinim of the goyim. But if when the child was born, the father was already converted, and the father has no heirs, very good. There was never a time where the father was the father before he converted. The moment he converts, he's no longer their father, halachically. So if there was never a time that they would have received the Yerusha, then even the Ruach HaChamim don't advocate for you to return that money.
So what about laws of orphans? Let's consider them orphans.
So go ahead and give them money. I mean it. You don't owe them.
Yeah.
I know that. You're not seeing the difference? I love it.
No, I see the difference, but I'm not seeing the logic. If the husband and the wife both convert while the wife is pregnant.
Yeah.
Okay, so the wife's delivering Jewish children, no?
But since the father
because at that moment when he converted, he gave up.
Yeah.
Whatever.
No, it's not that he gave up.
He's not the
kid was conceived from a non-Jewish
father. In other words, Vlad, let me say it better. If no one converted, if God forbid, if a Jewish man has a relation with a non-Jewish woman, if a non-Jewish man has a relation with a Jewish woman, he's not the father. Halachically, he'll have influence on the kid. The kid is a Yid. The father is a Goy. They're not related.
For him also.
You can make him a Sheberach. You can sit Shiva if you want to, Stam. But okay, let's go weiter. One second. What's the mother? That's one thing we have to address.
The mother converted, it becomes an issue, no?
The mother converted. Then the children are born Jewish and they are not connected to the father. Midin Torah. And there was never a time that they were connected to their father. Okay.
That's worth mentioning that works the other way also, right? We have the halacha of, like, let's say, a brother and sister that convert. So in Torah, they're not related. They convert.
That's right.
But we don't want to be worse than the goyim, so we say that we don't let them, right?
We don't want, that's something else. We don't want for something to become permitted when it was prohibited when they were goyim. So a brother and a sister cannot get married. The biggest aroyas, even the goyim have these aroyas, incest. What happens if they both convert? So you can't say, since they're now newly born people, they should be allowed to get married, because we don't allow, when you go from a kedusha kala to a kedusha chamura, to have more leniencies. That's something else that we learned that in Yevamos. Okay. Ruach HaChamim is like saying Midas Chasidus. That will be the last words of this Masechta. That means you're not obligated by the letter of the law, but if you choose to go beyond the letter of the law, sometimes when you go beyond the letter of the law, you're viewed as a fool. Sometimes you go beyond the law, you're doing the right thing. No, it's not what I think is Midas Chasidus is Midas Chasidus.
Sometimes being a fool is also the right thing.
Sometimes, okay, and Achanami. Okay, so I take out the word fool. Sometimes I can do something, and the spirit of the Chachamim, they don't. Giving money back is Ruach HaChamim Leichemen. And the third, and that will be the big topic of today, Kol Han Metaltal Niktim B'Mashiach. That's the rule. Movable items, the kinyan that finalizes the transference from the seller to the buyer, or the gifter to the recipient, is an act of drawing the physical item or lifting the item. I know there are other kinyanim, but you know what does not affect the final kinyan? Money. Paying money for land finalizes the deal. Even though the land is worth $1 million, I'm only giving a $5 down payment by land. If that was done with the intent of acquiring the land, I'll owe the rest. But Kesev and Shtar and Chazaka, they affect the kinyan by karka. By metaltalin, what finalizes the kinyan is moving the item. Now, however, what happens? Now, the Mishnah is not speaking about when money was given and then one party wants to retract. The Gemara will speak about it. And I want you to know, if that happens, there is a unique curse which is imposed on the person who made that retraction. It's called the Misha Para censor. Misha Para, from the doir of the Mabul, the one who took retribution from the generation of the flood, the one that took retribution from the generation of the Tower of Babel, will take retribution from you. It's not fun, but you can retract, but you get a curse. Here, you're not even getting the curse. No money changed hands. But when people do business, there comes a certain point where they say, we came to an agreement. I want to sell, you want to buy. We agreed on the price, and we said, okay, we're doing it. Now, if one retracts, you can't stop the retraction because no kinyan was made. No Mashiach was made. Nevertheless, for Kol HaMakayim is Devadei, but a person who has an ethic that since they gave the word, even though no formal kinyan was made, even though no money was even given, there, in other words, we're saying that by the letter of the law, there's nothing you can do. Not only could you retract, you won't even get the mishapara because no money was exchanged. You should not retract. You shouldn't retract. But if a retraction happened, you can't stop it. But if a person has their own boundary, I gave my word, I'm going through with it. And a lot more in the Gemara. Now let's start on today's daf. Puz. Puz is special gold. The final daf over here. In the Bavli, don't forget, daf pei zayin is never daf pei zayin because everything begins on daf beis. Here we're actually learning the 87th daf. Okay, so the Gemara begins with already the second case of the Mishnah, the one that we began today with, which is haloive min hager, someone who borrows money from a convert. Even though the convert had sons, they converted all together. Sons and the father, the whole family converted, and the ger passes away. The borrower is not obligated to pay back to the sons, but if he does, ruach hachamim noichemenu. So Rabbi Lazar says words that have to be clarified. His words are ubelvad levanav, that you want to go beyond the letter of the law. That's only to his children. I want you to know that in the holy tongue, it's a trick word. Banim could mean sons, not daughters, but banim could be generic children. What Rabbi Lazar is saying is that that's not only true if he has sons. We're mamish b'hashgacha pratis. I know that we're not up to there in chitas yet, but I think it's going to be tomorrow's chitas. Maybe it's even today's, because in Matas Masei, which is the parsha of the week, we're going back to what we had with Bnei Salafchad, that he left no sons, but he left daughters. By din Torah, if a man has no sons, his daughters inherit in the place of the sons. So what did he mean by children? He meant not only sons and daughters. That's what he meant. Ubelvad Levanov. Rabbi Yossi, boy, what do you mean by that? Ma ubelvad Levanov. So it explains the Gemara the meaning of Rabbi Lazar. Im yesh lebanim. If the converted with sons and daughters, but he also has sons, then again, what's the beyond the letter of the law? We don't want for the children to say, if none of us would have converted, there was a time that we would have inherited. Okay. You know what that din is? Not only would the sons inherit, if there would be no sons, but only daughters, they would also inherit. So the logic applies to the same. And if the man has no sons, he has daughters, then yes, very good. All right. You have to give the money back. You don't have to. If you would give it back, then why did Rabbi Lazar have to say it? Because Shaloi Toimar, you might have said the opposite. Right? None of this is Dvar Torah. Why is that? Just say something. Because look inside the Rashirilio, 3 lines from the top in the right column. Shaloi time of Dafka, only to the sons of the Havaras Nachle Kiruya. You would think the whole thing is not obligatory. The whole thing is not obligatory. You're going beyond the letter of the law. So only say to the sons. No. Yachzelabanov, only to the sons. That's why the Rabbi tells you, no, that it's not only to the sons, it's also to the daughters. It's also to the daughters. I want to tell you that the Rashirilio concludes that Rabbi Lazar says the words ubilvad, only. He is excluding something. What happens if this convert has no sons and no daughters? But he has a brother. And there is a limit. In other words, we don't say whoever, we only say to the children. We don't push it more than the children. Children take as sons or daughters, not and daughters. Sons or daughters. Means if he has no sons, he gives it to the daughters, but that's where it ends. We find a similar ruling. Misha Meis, Soif Mishpachtoi. A person passes away, and that person there's no one in his father's family. There's no one from his father's family, which if there would have been that case, it means if a guy has no sons, but if he has no sons or daughters or grandchildren, then it goes to his father. If his father passed away, then it goes to his father's children. But there's no one from the father's side. But he does have a mother. His mother is there. Then lo yachzer. Then you don't have to return it. Here again, guys, we're speaking about a convert. Same convert. Now, I want you to know that by Goyim are accustomed to having a mother inherit from a son if she's the only heir. We do have that by Goyim. We don't have that by Jews. By Jews, it doesn't work that way. So you would think, well, the logic is that the kids will say that if none of us would have converted, the mother would have said, I would have gotten it. I regret. We don't push it all the way to the end. We only say it for the sons. That if the only person now is the mother, even though you might have thought the mother should inherit, we don't say that. I take that back. Faket, we do say it. Lo yachzer. You don't have to give it to the mother, but
did she convert too?
To the mother.
Did she convert too?
Yeah. Because we don't. No, it's the whole point is we don't want.
Not converted, is it still concept or no? This whole discussion is only when the children or the mother converted.
The way the Maraf Fulda said it, it's only if they all converted. Because if they didn't convert it, the whole chashash is yachzor l'suram. They're not returning back l'suram. They never converted. In other words, it's not that they're going to have a time on the Jewish people. Now that you guys converted, that's not what the Maraf Fulda says. Maybe there are others that say otherwise. We don't want the goy to say that, look at what you Jews did. You disinherited me. Okay. Now, let's go to a case where we're speaking about debts that are owed or not owed. When should one take it back? When should one not take it back? Listen to this. Hagazlan, she'asa tshuva. If an armed robber did tshuva, now normally part of tshuva would mean to amend the wrong that you did. Part of his tshuva is that he wants to return the items that he stole. Ubikish lahachzer esagzela, and he wants to return the value of the items that he stole. So the sages say, whoever receives it from him, they're not pleased with him. Wowie. Now you're looking at me strange. Guys, we learned all of this. Let's review this sugya from Bava Kama in the Rashadilio. It's 6 lines from the top on the right column. This, by the way, there are many limitations to this. Let's begin. So he says, that's Bavli Bava Kama Tav Tzadik Dalet. That this was taught in the days of Rabbeinu HaKadosh. What happened was, Yaron, there was a story that there was a man that he was a gazlan. He was an armed robber. And at some point, he wanted to do tshuva. So his wife told him, you empty one. If you want to do tshuva, even the belt that you're wearing does not belong to you. In other words, how can you do tshuva? You have to give back everything that you stole. There'll be nothing left. So when he heard those inspiring words from his wife, he didn't do tshuva. So what Rabbeinu HaKadosh said, that Hagazlanim, or people that lived off interest, that now are doing tshuva on their own, and now they are returning that which they took, don't take it from them. Because if not, they won't do tshuva. Now, a couple of limitations to that. Number one, that Asher Ilya brings from the Gemara and Bava Kama, that Hainu Dafka, when the item that was robbed is no longer here. Even though when the wife told him, you won't even own your belt, she didn't mean that the belt. If the belt was stolen, he has to give it back. She meant that everything that we own came from money from your career of being a gazlan. In other words, my avnei, the may avnei. I want to tell you that Tosfos over there, I looked up the Gemara, says that that's only for his generation. In other words, once he passes away, his children have to return everything. Yeah, well, yeah, they should, even though they didn't steal. They're very good. They should, because it's not going to stop them from doing tshuva. And finally, and one thing that's important from the Gemara and Bava Kama, we are speaking about someone who did tshuva on their own. We're not speaking about someone who was caught by the Beis Din. Once someone is being forced to right the wrongs that he or she did, Beis Din forces them to give everything back. That's the obligation. We're speaking about someone who could have gotten away with it. They on their own are doing tshuva. So there was a gzeira in the opposite concept. Ruach HaChamim Noicheimenu, go beyond the letter of the law. Here it's the opposite. The letter of the law is you have to give everything back that you stole. Beyond, the Chachamim says don't do that.
Wait.
Yes.
I think that's what they say. I think they say for the receiver, for the captivity.
In other words, part of the tshuva is I'm making amends. When I'm making amends, I'm going over to the people and say, here's a chayin, Rabbi Yid, I stole from you around the value of $100. Here's $100. The Rabbeinu HaKadosh says that person should tell me, I am not taking the money from you.
What does that do?
That not tshuva. Why don't we accept the tshuva?
In other words, what do you mean? We accept the tshuva. We accept that God.
The victim's not accepting tshuva.
The victim is not accepting the money.
Why?
Because if this guy would have to actually pay all back, it's going to stop many people from doing tshuva.
Oh.
Because they're going to say, there's too much money that I stole, I can't do tshuva. Second thing today, Kevin. Wow, today is a big day over here. I can say one thing that marked me. Well, I learned in Switzerland many years ago in yeshiva, and it was mamish middle of nowhere. It was the middle of a mountain, and there used to be a kosher store on a truck that would come once a week to sell kosher product for the bachrim. And when I was there, the Rosh Yeshiva made an assembly, and he read a letter, and the letter was written by a bacher that learned there a few years prior, and he already moved on to another yeshiva. While he was there, he used to steal the nash. He used to steal stuff from the... And a few years later, he grew up. He went from being 14 to being 16 or 17, and he decided to do tshuva. So he sent a check, and he apologized. And he told him that I approximately stole this amount of money. He accepted the check, don't worry. And it was very inspiring. And Fakir, that was the tshuva that he showed that when you see, without mentioning the name, you do something wrong, you can always fix it. It's very nice.
The ice cream truck should not have cashed a check.
Maybe he didn't. Maybe the Rosh Yeshiva took the check. I don't know who took the money. I just know that someone took the money.
And he knows he did. So down the line, if he says, you know what, I know I know he defrauded, or whatever, there's no proof or there's no. So if now the guy wants to make amends, I shouldn't be able to.
Can I say something as a perhaps? First of all, we're not learning halacha, we're learning Gemara. Perhaps that's only if someone was a career gazlan. In other words, a career gazlan, if he has to return everything, he can't do tshuva. If the guy, maybe if the guy that defrauded you, he had a livelihood. As a bonus for himself, he also stole a couple of dollars from you. But he's a guy that can survive by amending. If you can't live by making amends, then you can't expect a guy to make amends. There was a big logic behind it. I don't know how to apply it in other cases. The logic is working for me. Maybe I had coffee and you didn't. I don't know. Next, let's go weiter. The third case in the it's mamish late. The third case in the Mishnah was whoever keeps his word. So, like we mentioned in the intro, guys, you have making a word that we're doing a business deal. There, the retraction doesn't even elicit a mishabara censor. Then there is giving of money as a down payment, which does not make the halachic kinyan. There, the retraction is worse than you get a mishapara. And then once you did the kinyan, you can't retract. You cannot retract. Our Mishnah never spoke about the mishapara. The Gemara is going to bring that into the pot over here. Says the Gemara, people who do business, they make an agreement. There's negotiation, and then there is where we come to an agreement. Okay, we are agreed. Verbal agreement. Thank you. There are times that if one retracts, the worst is the sages are not happy with you. But the zimnin, there are other times that it's more than the sages are happy or not happy. There are times that we say that that he will be handed over. He'll get a mishapara, as we just spoke out. Okay, and the Marafulda is the one that gives the whole, like we said. It's about giving money. Look inside the Marafulda. It's around the middle of the narrow line, 17 lines from the top. But the zimnin nomrinon ein moisrin oisi ela l'mishapara. And what's the mishapara censor? That they tell him, based and declares, the one who took retribution from the generation of the flood. Who yipara, he'll take retribution. From the person who doesn't keep his word. And the Rabbi Yochanan is saying, emes. We're not making a contradiction. It depends. Every case is different. If a guarantee was given, we're going to see more details about this guarantee. Like I mentioned, the down payment money. No, when do you get a mishapara? When do you not get a mishapara? It's two different things. Then, but if no down payment was given at all, then and as we find over here, same thing we find in Bava Metzia, in Pedek Hazov, in the Bavli, and in the Yerushalmi. Okay, very good. Now, Rab Ze'era quoted Rabbi Bo, that quotes Rabbi Yochanan. If a person, while they're making a transaction, when they came to an agreement, the person gives ring as security for payment, and now he wishes to go back on his commitment, he will not get the mishapara. We don't say that the giving of a ring is like a down payment. This is very important. We do not say that. We say that the ring, which is something personal that the person wants back, won't be part of the down payment. It's like people should remember that they made an agreement. Let me read side the words in the Mara folder. We just left off. Guys, means the spirit of the sages are not happy. We're never happy when a person goes back on his word, but he won't get the censor. He won't get the curse. Since the ring is there, the ring is not money. The ring is an object. I only gave it a ring Unlike other items that are given, that it's understood that they were actually part of the down payment. It's once money was given, even though kesef is not koina, you get a mishapara if you retract. A ring is not called payment. What about a golden coin? Now I want you to know that in those days, the coinages were silver, kesef, silver. Were there times that people paid with gold? Yeah, but it was a minority of times. So a golden ring is vadai, not down payment. Therefore, there's no mishapara. What happens if not only did they come to a business agreement, an understanding, but the guy gave a golden coin, zohuv, maybe the value of the golden coin is considered a down payment. What is it? So Rabbi responded, no, that a golden coin is like a ring. Tabas. I take it back. Rabbi says only a tabas is not called money. Very good. A golden coin is called already money. What's the difference? Ma bein zov bein tabas. So he says, Zov darka lishtanos. It's common that when people, even though most people, the currency was silver, but it was common that when people gave gold, they would already say, keep the golden coin as part of the payment. Gold, not a golden coin. Very good. Tabas be'enohu. The ring is something that people want back. People want their rings back. All right, weiter. For those who are so against men wearing rings, the Gemara is filled with men wearing rings, but the rings were not the marriage rings. They were the rings, with the stones, either for signets or the stones represented what the profession you're in. Okay. Says the Gemara, what happens if someone promises to give a present? Not until now we're speaking about someone who came to a business transaction agreement. What happens with Tamatana? So Rabbi Yaakov bar Zavdi, in the name of Rabbi Bo, in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, says that Omar litein matana lechavere. If someone makes a commitment, I'm going to give you a gift, ubikei shlach zerboy, and then the person wants to renege, boy, no problem. He could renege.
No censor.
Not only no censor, nothing. But how can that be? Fragt die Gemara, komm Rabbi Yossi mit Rabbi Yaakov bar Zavdi, Omar lei. Hahon lav tzedek vehein tzedek. How can you break your promise? And I want to say something that when we learned in the Mishnah, by business, that if people make a verbal agreement, we're doing a deal, and then they back out. So the spirit of the sages are not happy. Or if the person keeps his word, it's a virtue. Based on what? There's a pasuk in Shoftim that speaks about weights. And when the Torah says that you should have a ephah tzedek, vehin tzedek, ephah is a solid measure. Hin is a liquid measure. But the Chachamim say that the word hin, homiletically, is like hen. Hen means yeah. That your yes should be tzedek. Which once you gave your word, keep your word. You're not bound by it in a court, but it's virtuous. So the Gemara is asking, why are you telling me that you can pull back from a gift? Why? The same logic. For hin tzedek, if you said you're doing something, go ahead and do it. So Amari says, B'shasha Amar, hin shal tzedek hoyu. He says something gavaldik. This is very, very big. He says that when by a gift, when I promise to give a person, let's say, a pound of flour, if the value of flour did not change and I retract from giving my gift, then it's not okay. Ethically not okay, because keep your word. But when it comes to a gift, if when I told you I'm giving you a pound of flour, at that time a pound of flour, let's say, was worth $5, and now it's worth $6, my retraction is not unethical. Because when I said yes, I was planning to give it to you, but something changed. Now, by a business transaction, we do not say this logic that I said. We only say this by a gift. By a business transaction, once the word was given, ethically, go through with your word. Period. By a gift, that's the difference. By a gift, if nothing changed, same thing, then ethically. But by a gift, I'm not speaking about tzedakah. Tzedakah is a whole different category. I'm speaking about a gift between two people. Okay. Says the Gemara that because by tzedakah, your word is like a kinyan. Actually, it's the opposite. It's worse than a mishapara. When a person makes a commitment, a verbal commitment to give tzedakah, like giving to the Beis Hamikdash, their word is like a kinyan. Okay, now Rav appears to disagree. Rav Polik with this, what Rabbi Yaakov Azavdi says that Rav says that Kada no Amar livnei beisi. Once I tell my household members litin matana labar nash to give someone a gift, once I make that commitment, Rav says that leina means leis ana chazar bi. I will never go back on my commitment. I will never go back on my commitment. Now, you know what they understood the Rav initially to mean? That once he said to give something, he doesn't go back because that guy already acquired it. That's the initial understanding. And the conclusion of today's daf and the whole Masechta is that no, that just telling household members to give a gift doesn't have the other person already acquire it. We'll see how is it even possible for them to acquire. We'll see that in a moment. But there is a havamina in what Rav says, and then there is the maskana. So there are three steps is like this. Just like by a business transaction, we have two levels. Once a down payment was made, retraction demands a censor, a curse. No down payment was made, you should keep your word. It's ethical to keep your word. By a gift, the way Rabbi Yaakov Arzavdi is saying, is that, no transaction happened yet, then it depends. If the circumstances are the same, then you cannot retract. If the circumstances change, that means the item that you promised to gift is more valuable. It's not even ethical. You can retract, and you're not even going against the spirit of the sages. Rav is saying, I would never retract. Once I made a commitment to give a gift, I'll never go back. But the understanding now is to the extreme, that Rav is saying that once he made a commitment to give it, then that person already acquired it. Now, based on that misunderstanding, that Pei Zayin Amud Beis, we have a few minutes left. The Gemara is challenging Rav. How can you say that? That Masnisa, Pligal Rav, there's a brayse that contradicts what Rav is saying. Which is, when do we say that the act of drawing something near actually affects a kinyan? That's only if the item and the people are in the public domain. Public domain actually means in a simta, or if they are in a chatzar she'eina shel shneim, or if they are in a property that belongs to a third party. However, if the movable item, it's about the item, not about the people. If the movable item is in the domain of the buyer didn't take it, but it's in his domain. Once the sellers and the buyer came to a verbal agreement that they're going to make the transaction, there is something called kinyan chatzar. The item is already in the property of the buyer. So the buyer owns it.
The property acquired it.
The property acquired. In other words, it's beyond the mishapara. Here you cannot retract. What happens in the opposite? Let's go. Halt cup. What happens if the item is in the domain of the seller? If you're selling me something, Meshicha would mean that I'm not even picking it up. I'm dragging it on the ground. If it's on your domain, Meshicha doesn't even help. Only lifting it up or taking it out of your domain. But Reshus HaMoicher, loikana either Ache Yagbia or Ache Yimshech v'yoytzik es koil min Reshus HaBa'al. Now comes a final case. What happens? This is very important. So the seller, you have a custodian over here. Meshicha in the seller's domain is not effective. Here you have a seller that asked a third party to hold on to an item. The property upon which the item is resting belongs to whom? So we are assuming that the custodian grants the owner of the item some sort of right in the property. If I am guarding your cup, it's not only that I am your custodian, but the fact that it's laying in my closet, I, by default, am granting you some right in the property. Now, if you want to sell it to someone else, that's how it works by a custodian. That's how it works by default. Now, if you are agreeing to selling this to someone else, and it's in a third party's and a custodian's property, then I am granting the rights to that guy. So now, kinyan chatzar will acquire it for that person without a kinyan.
That piece of land, that small piece of land where the object is his.
Yeah, but it's movable property.
Often.
So we say that if it's in the buyer's property, he acquires it without a kinyan. If it's in the seller's property, you can't make meshicha. If it's in a custodian's property, and now so we say that we don't say that automatically the buyer owns the property and has kinyan chatzir loy kana either ache zakenu behen, either the custodian will say I am acquiring it for you because it's in the custodian's property. If he makes that statement, then the buyer owns it kinyan chatzir, or if he tells the new buyer, rent out the place from me, and you automatically own it. You have to rent out my place. Now, all of that shows you that if I give a gift and the item that I'm gifting is not in your property, it's not so easy for you to acquire it. The Havamina was that the Rav never retracted in a gift because the Rav held that the buyer already acquired it. How would they acquire it? You can't even say because now it's as if the Rav became a custodian. It doesn't work that way. So what does Rav do with this braisa? Answers the Gemara, the Rav's statement is to the case where the recipient of his gift was standing with him. That's already different. In other words, if you have Rav, the people who he was telling to give a gift and the recipient of the gift are all standing together, here we say it's as if part of the gift is that Rav is treating the new owner like someone who asked Rav to be a custodian over his items. It's as if some of the property, so to say, is rented to him, and now kinyan chatzir acquires it, or trying to push that the Rav never retracted because the guy owns it. The Gemara is not going to like that. And Khan, by the Braisa, b'shaloi yemida etzloi. And the Gemara wants to prove it, and Teidalach, I'll prove it to you. Chad barnash afkedei roven al milsa v'yikras. A person once deposited a security for salt. He was buying salt, and he gave a secure expensive. Now the seller wanted to pull back because the salt became more expensive. They came to Rav, and Rav told him, "Oh, that you had the deposit acquired the value of the deposit, the value of the deposit. So you have to give him salt in the value of the security, and if you don't do that, then you're going to get a mishapara." I know, guys, it's late, but I need another 2 minutes. Look inside the way the Marav Folder learns this case, around 7 lines from the bottom of the Amid. That that buyer gave him a security deposit. And now the salt became more expensive and the seller wants to renege. So Raf told him that the value of the security acquired that amount of salt. And if you won't give him at least that amount of salt, then you're going to get a mishapara. So, okay, even because we keep on saying, Danny, right, that money itself, even though we're transferring the guarantee as money, money doesn't finalize the deal. What finalizes the deal? Only a kinyan. Prior to finalizing a deal, when you only give the money, then what are you subject to? A mishapara. There's another nuance here. The mishapara is not on the whole deal. The mishapara is only on the value of the security. Okay.
Right. The security does not guarantee you the entire the product. If you put a security for a bike, the price goes up. You still get the bike at the same price.
No. So what we're saying here, we're not talking about a bike because a bike is one gush. We're speaking about a quantity that you can break it into pieces. We're learning a nuance that the mishapara retraction is only on the value of the security. That's not the point. The point is, says the Gemara, because Tamanu Amar Kad Ano Amar Lebnei Beis Yilit Matanu Lebanash Leino Chazarbi. And over here, Rav is saying, no, it's again, you're trying to tell me that when Ravi committed to give a gift, he never retracted because the gift was acquired. Here, the most that Rav is saying is that you're going to get a mishapara. All of this is based on the misunderstanding that Rav's non-retraction was a halachic non-retraction. So the Gemara answers, this is the final understanding, that when Rav says that whenever I told my household to give a gift, I never retracted, that's not by the letter of the law. By the letter of the law, you could retract. It works with the Braisa. Rav is saying that I go beyond the letter of the law, just like by business transactions. Ruach HaChamim is to keep your word. Rav held that even by a gift, Even if the gift value went up, keep your word. Tamon lemidas hadin. Lemidas hadin, you can make a retraction, and even if you retract the value of the salt, the most you get is a mishapara. But ma derav nohig is lemidas chasidis. And here, guys, we concluded Perek Hashvius. We concluded the Masechta. God willing, Vlad will make the Siyum this Shabbos because he has yahrzeit for his mother. And tomorrow morning, we will start learning Masechtas Trumas.